Hello, Chicago. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. I'm H.J. Lee, and I'm a co-founder and executive director of KoreanAmericanStory.org. Thank you all for joining us tonight for the very first Raw Story Slam in Chicago. So, welcome. This is our fifth Raw Story Slam since we launched in 2016, but the first one in Chicago. And we're thrilled to be able to share it with you all. Now I want to introduce you to Chicago-based multidisciplinary artist and activist, Mia Park. Mia shares her passion for discovery through acting, teaching yoga and Tai Chi, writing, producing events, playing music, and volunteering. So please welcome Mia Park.
Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Mia Park. I am so honored to be here as your MC. I have been in Chicago for over 20 years, so I feel like a local. But I wanted to do a quick just intro on my Korean American story and why this format and why this organization is so important to me. So my mom was born in North Korea, raised speaking Japanese, and she escaped from North Korea when she was 8, right before the war, to South Korea. So my father was born in Japan, growing up speaking Japanese as a second-class citizen. He was born and raised in Nagasaki, and I didn't find out until 2 years ago that he survived the atomic bomb, okay? I know. It's one of those Christmas dinners you're like, 뭐라고 했어요? Like, what did you just say? It's because he had a stroke. That's why he talks now. Because you know how Korean parents are. Seriously. So, So he, because the Koreans were second-class citizens, he said the Koreans were not allowed to live in the actual city of Nagasaki. They were relegated to where the roads were dirt and they barely had electricity because they were second-class citizens. And that's what saved their lives. Because the United States was so accurate in dropping the bomb, the actual bomb only took up 1 square block, and he saw the whole thing happen from really, really far away in basically what was the suburbs because he was a second-class Korean citizen, and it saved his life. So after that, the Japanese government scooped up all the Koreans and they kicked them out. So my father didn't get to South Korea until he was 7 as a refugee. So that being said, so they both survived World War II, my parents, and then they survived the Korean War. So what we're talking about in our modern Korean American paradigm, trauma over trauma over trauma. And how many Korean parents here are in therapy? Right. Hey, we got one. Woke. Thank you, woke. So my parents are 80. Okay, I think they're beyond what they got is church. So and they both immigrated. They had the long story arc to come here to America separately. They met and married in Philadelphia. So I was born and raised in America. I think we're kind of guilty enough, just like Asian, Korean. We kind of have the Christian. My uncle was a 목사님, so there's that level of I'm never good enough, ever. But just, to bring it real into the modern times. So my parents grew up with an incredible amount of unprocessed trauma that they still deal with. They're still together. They're still in Philly. And being the child of that it's an interesting thing now as an adult to look back on my personal Korean American experience and be able to relate it to everybody else's in the room on many levels, but also understand that it just happens, my family story is it's just different. I don't know anyone else's parents who survived the atomic bomb in Nagasaki or, I think a lot of our parents escaped from North Korea, but it's just an interesting cocktail that results in who I am today. I've done monologues and performances and lots of therapy on having this survivor's guilt of, I'm not Korean enough, my Korean's not very good, I'm American, but I, present like this, and we know what it's like to be in the world growing up, looking as we do. It's better now, I think. Anyway, so it's just so great to have this organization and this forum that it is archiving and celebrating our individual Korean American experiences, which relates larger to our Korean American experience at large here, which of course, once our individual and our collective stories are heard, everybody's stories is more accessible, and we're more open to hearing everyone's individual and collective stories. So Thanks for listening to my little quick arc. And I want to give a round of applause to KoreanAmericanStory.org. Because really, thank you, HJ, and thank you, Jeannie, thank you, everyone, for having this organization. I bet everybody who's Korean American in the room, when you first heard of the group, wasn't there a little something that was like, well, me. I relate to that. That's me. That's also my arc. And who else is on there? Are we related? Did we go to church together? Something like that. Like there's a touch point because we want to connect to each other in this way. Is this the largest house like ever or just this year? We have the largest Roar storytelling house ever, right? In 5 years? Chicago, what? So good. You guys, so that means you're coming back next year, right? Duh. Why weren't you here 5 years ago? Thank you. All right, so we have some more introductions to do. So the way this worked was that we sent out a call for storytelling, and there was a panel of 4 preliminary judges who chose the participants happening tonight. So let's give a shout out for those judges. Stand up, wave your arms if you're here. Ji Lee, Oncho, Eunji Kim, somewhere in the back. So thank you, preliminary judges. And then we also have, as HJ mentioned, an illustrious panel of judges here. So these prizes are for real. We are like walking the walk up here. Third prize is $200. Second prize is $500. And the first prize is $1,500. That's lovely. So, each of our stories is priceless. But seriously, though, each of our stories is, platitude? No, for real. Like, we each have really important stories. But for those of the contestants who went through the time, the effort, and the energy to write a story, put yourself on tape, and submit it and come here, we'll give you $1,500. You just buy your Nuna Anni something, okay? That's what I'm saying. That's all. So let's introduce our judges. We have Kathy Im. Can you stand up, please? Kathy Im is the Director of Journalism and Media for the MacArthur Foundation and oversees their investments in public service, journalism, documentary storytelling, and participatory civic media. Thank you. And then next we have actor and comedian Ji-Yeon Kim. Woo, Jin. He's a founding ensemble member of Laugh Out Loud Theater and the host of Batsu, an improv game show. And of course, he is also a very funny guy, very talented actor, this guy too. And next we have Sue Pack. Sue Pack is our local playwright who's been produced in New York, Chicago, and LA. She also teaches playwriting and screenwriting in Northwestern University and Qatar. Brilliant playwright, this one. Amazing. We also have, speaking of amazing, we have David Rhee, who is a fantastic, he can stand up. He's a fantastic actor and writer and director who's appeared across the country. He's our Broadway guy. I like bragging about him, about that. He's the artistic director for Token Theater, an Asian American theater company here in Chicago. I've had a crush on David for like 20 years, just saying, he's amazing. And then we have Ji-Yeon, who we're so honored to have. She's a rock star. Woo! She has been pioneering Asian American studies at Northwestern University for a long time. Thank you for all of your work. She is a former journalist and has led oral history and performance projects documenting the Asian American diaspora. It's so nice to have you here. It's an honor. Thanks. So we'd also like to thank actor, director, writer Sheila Ivy Traister. I hope you're pronouncing your name right. Is she here? No, she's not here. In the universe, thank you. Thank you. The Denver-based coach for Roar Story Slam, and she's worked with our participants for tonight's storytelling event. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this next part. So before our storytelling, I have the honor to introduce, not only just a top stand-up comic person in Chicago, she just happens to be Korean American, and she happens to be a female, and she's also hot. So let's give it up for Eunji Kim.
Yes, I am so attractive. Woo, I'm sweaty. You're sweaty? Yeah. I was just reading, I literally learned this today, that Korean Americans don't have this genetic thing that when we sweat, we do not smell. A majority of us don't smell. Pretty cool. And I was thinking, it feels like it's nice to know that in the coming race war that that we can be used as archers and golfers, but also as non-smelly allies. Like, my Komo also was born in Japan, and she came over, and this is all stuff that like came to light recently. Like, I don't know how many bottles of soju need to flow, but and it was just like all this like revelatory stuff about their story and things like that. And I have to say, like, as Korean parents, like, just when you drop off that Fuji apple, like, give your kid something else, like. So with this event, I had to think about what it means to be a Korean American, right? And I was thinking about it, and for me, the first memory that came to mind was in high school, all these oppa, like gangpe oppas, like gangster Asian people, hanging outside of the high school, and they're all like, yeah. And they're like, they want to test how strong your ankles and knees are, and how long you can squat, and conceivably poo? I don't even know. But I was like, no, I don't think that's it. So I did homework, as we do, and there's a concept in like post-colonial Korean thought. It's a concept called Han, right? And it's like in the Wikipedia entry that I skimmed, it said, I did the homework, I didn't say I did it good. It said that it is a grief, a resentment that has no English equivalent. And man, I felt that, I felt that. And I realized I think that feeling can be embodied by this sound, which is, yeah! But obviously, when we think about what it means to be a Korean American, it's a plurality, right? We are not a monolith. There is no one thing, aside from the squatting, you do have to do that. But yeah, it's just whatever the journey you decide to take on this is, So I've been thinking about this a lot, and at least with regard to representation specifically. And this is a Korean crowd, so I don't have to explain, but like Chloe Kim. This is the part where you go, yeah, fighting! Yeah! That's the vibe I'm going for here, guys. But yeah, so Chloe Kim, right? Gold medal, snowboarding. What a marvelous event in our culture, right? And also her dad was like a non-traditional like immigrant father and all that stuff. And this is what it meant to me to watch her win the gold, right? First of all, awesome that she was like, moving out of the way, some Finnish bitch was like, get out of here. But that I, as a 36-year-old woman who has never skied, I don't even know how to swim. And that's dry snow, okay? I saw Chloe Kim do that, and I thought, I should try it. I could do that. And I realized this is what white people feel all the time. The possibilities are endless. Okay. So, speaking about plurality, I do troublingly fulfill some stereotypes. And listen, I can feel whenever I do Asian rooms, all of your buttholes are like, no, don't. Girl, don't do it. But yeah, I'm a bad driver. I'm a very bad driver. Yeah, I've been in a lot of accidents. My insurance is crazy. And it's upsetting, but my parents also do own a dry cleaner, whatever. I used to have this tag about how my parents also used to beat me, which gets a tepid laughter, but I needed to get it out. And I was doing this Chinese American show. It was a political event, and someone from the back yelled out, "Because she loves you." And I was like, "엄마, what are you doing here?" What? So I am a bad driver and all this stuff, and it's upsetting, all those things. But I will say this, okay? As a female driver, as an Asian woman that is a bad driver, it is the only time that white men are afraid of me. And there's usually a white dude I point at. Because I'm targeting you, sir. Okay. So, you guys, I'm a mom. I know. Thank you. I look incredible. By the way, I always think that, but like whenever I ask other Korean ajumas, like, oh, how old do you think I am? They're always like 36. Oh, ajumas. You look exactly what you are. So I'm a mom. And we were gonna celebrate my son's Peggy, the 100-day ceremony, right? And my mom wanted to buy him a very special outfit. Like, aside from the hanbok that had been very lovingly carried over from an ocean away, you know? But she wanted to get him like a bow tie, because as she put it, it's so cute. And so we went to this boutique on Southport Avenue. And for those of you who are in Chicago, and for those of you who aren't maybe unfamiliar with Southport, but it's like, Southport is if Anthropology, the store, opened up a street. You know what I mean? It's fancy. So we're at this boutique, and my mom is paying for it. And the woman behind the counter looks at my mother and says, what is your name? Because, you know, at boutiques, they want to do this stuff. And my mom calls out to me in Korean, this woman needs your name. And I yell out to her in Korean, why? And so my mother looks at this woman and says, why you need? And this woman this woman starts to take it down as her name. Oh, why you need? Yes, okay. Like, in her mind, she's like the most woke white lady. Oh, yes, why you need? Yes, I studied abroad with the why you need. Of course, the traditional spelling of why you need. Of course. Because that's the thing. This woman did not ask my mom how to spell it. Like, yeah. Well, okay. So, yeah, I'm a mom. And the thing is, once you become a mother, obviously your body changes, right? And for me, there's like a small divot here, you know? Like my son tore apart my abdominal muscles when he was in utero. Cute. And it's just like a small divot here, okay? And it's like, basically, it's crazy. It's like the size, the whole of it is like exact shape of my hopes and dreams, you know? It's a little edgy stuff for you. But yeah, what actually happened to me is my retina's almost detached. Yeah, no, it's real. And the thing about it is, Korean women, and women in general, were so strong. I didn't realize the pressure I was feeling was anything but just exhaustion, right? I'm a young mom. And she was like, the doctor, and I'm telling the doctor this, like, I can't believe my retina's almost detached. And my doctor, who is an Asian woman, because I want the best of care, my doctor was like, yeah, you know, it's like when I was bleeding out of my uterus, performed surgery, and then had my child. And I was like, okay, Dr. Khan, I get it. You win. Because that's the thing, I had made a mistake. You cannot complain to older Asian women. Because they're always going to come back at you with that stuff. And so, as an Asian comedian, I am legally obligated to do an impression of my mom. So this is an impression of my mother if I ever try to complain to her. 은지야, 알아. 알아. Yeah. 은지야, 야. 알아. Avocado very expensive. 알아, 야. 엄마 알아. 엄마 no. You know, avocado very expensive. You know, when mommy young, mommy have to eat a tire. Because of the war. It's like, what am I supposed to say to that? But I'm a mom now, right? I'm a Korean mom, so I'm gonna try. This is an impression of my son, who will never do comedy, because I will love him, right? You guys, I'm good, look at me. Love that though, thank you, I feel that love. But this is an impression of my son doing an impression of me, perhaps at this very show in 30 years, okay? Hello, my name is Do-yeon. This is an impression of my mom. She's an older lady. Oh, Solomon. Sorry. Oh, Do-yeon. I'm gonna get an accent when I'm old. Oh, Do-yeon아. Oh, you say, you complain because you have to live in bunker because ozone layer is so bad. But you know, when mommy young, Wi-Fi very spotty outside of the city. Thank you guys, I'm Eunji Kim.
Give it up for Eunji Kim. Another round of applause. Come on. Come on. 이리 와, 이리 와, 이리 와, 이리 와. So we're so look, find the light. Thank you. So come on, 이리 와. So I'm going to give you just a couple little questions. You're very unconventional for a typical Korean American woman. So like, do you have an opinion about that? Do you have any advice, or what do you think about that? Like, you're a little cray. I love it.
Be nice to your parents, but still be whatever you want. I will say this. For the younger people in the audience, I think the paradigm is very different. I think I'm 36, and it was just very, very different, right? Like, especially being in the Midwest. Like, Midwest Koreans, it's like a different vibe. You know what I mean? Yes. It's like, because we don't have a Flushing, we don't have a, you know, like, in LA is LA. Like, I had no idea until I went to LA that Asian people could be police officers, you know? Like, it was like, but you know, there's like there's fewer of us, and as a result, there's like, you know, I see fewer of us. And I think for the young people in the audience now, I think it's changing, right? You guys live in a post-Mulan world. Like, I remember when it came out, you know? And it was like, you kind of have to be into it to watch it. But now, like, with the young people, like, it's part of the regular pantheon of Disney princesses and whatever, you know? And you know, making your own way, I think the culture is whatever it is, but I think even parents living in America now, even if you're an immigrant or whatever, like, I just think it's different. It's different. And also if you're in a situation where like, you feel like you can't be yourself, you store it up and use it for a book one day.
That's right. All right, thank you so much, girl. Let's give her another round of applause. Thank you. That's awesome. She's a great warmer-upper for the main event, because now we are open-minded to the possibilities of what being a Korean American and telling your story is about, right? So, are we ready for the main event? No, we got to make that louder. Are we ready for our storytellers? All right, Chicago, here we go. So, here we go. First up, we're going to welcome Stephanie H. Kim. Stephanie is a journalist currently interning at WBEZ. It's our Chicago National Public Radio station. And she is helping people discover the magic of libraries while working at the Deerfield Public Library. She also freelances for local newspapers. Her story is Daddy's Girl. Give it up for Stephanie Kim!
Growing up in America with a Korean immigrant father, one phrase I didn't really understand was daddy's girl. The sentiment behind that phrase was just so foreign to me, and that's because my dad was someone I did not want to become close with. Ever since I can remember, I saw my dad as this very grumpy and unhappy person. Don't get me wrong, we had our joyful moments, but for most of my life, that's how I felt about him. One time, my middle brother Josh and I were eating dinner at the table with my dad, and my mom was sick in bed, which happened often. But anyway, Josh and I were goofing off as little kids do, being a little bit loud and rambunctious, when suddenly my dad hushed us. Dinner is a time to eat, not to talk. And while the tone of his voice and the frown on his face and the anger in his eyes staring from behind his glasses were all quite scary to me, I couldn't help giggling as I imagined steam coming out from behind his ears like in the Tom and Jerry cartoons, as the literal steam from his soup was fogging up his glasses. And I wrote about this moment in college years later, and I was so excited to show my dad. I was like, he's gonna love it. He's gonna be so proud of me. But after he read it, there was this long silence. Then he said, "Is this how you see me?" There was a twinge of pain in his voice. I was taken aback. I began to question, do I really know my dad? And if I don't, then what is my perception of him based on? I realized it was based on fear. The fear that if I unpacked my heart, my true feelings and frustrations of having to live with the fear of making him angry, of creating conflict in the home, of not being sure of his love for me, that I would discover that I didn't love him. I needed to reconcile all the resentment I had against my dad, and not just for the time that he treated me and Josh that way, or for the shouting matches he got into with my oldest brother for not living up to his potential, or for the many times he placed his comfort above my mom's, who, as I mentioned earlier, often got sick. She has polio, which makes it hard for her to walk and creates other challenges. But worst of all, I resented my dad for having to live with the constant burden of his unhappiness, of how his life had turned out here in America. My dad moved to America when he was 15. And by the age of 28, he started out in a promising career as an accounting professor, only to struggle to keep a steady job. He carried this weight of his failure for so many years. And he put up walls to hide his shame, even if it hurt himself and those around him. And as his daughter, I just felt like there were times I was knocking and calling out to him, "Appa, I know you're in there. Behind the wall you put up when you were a child and you had to be your mom's protector. Behind the wall you put up as the eldest of three and had to set the example of what it means to achieve the American dream. Behind the wall you put up as a Korean American immigrant who had to prove his worth through status, success, and wealth that never came to you. And behind the wall as a Christian father and husband who had to appear strong and faithful no matter how hard life got. Somewhere along the way, I stopped knocking. I gave up. And I walked away, thinking, this is who my dad is, and nothing is gonna change that. But over the years, there was one person who never stopped trying to bring down the walls that my dad put up. My mom. By the grace of God, she kept praying, she kept loving, and she kept caring because she saw who my dad could be if he would just accept himself and accept help along the way. And now, at 61, I think my dad is finally at this point in his life. He no longer defines success as accumulating wealth and status, but simply as just doing his best with happiness. He gets out of his comfort zone to help my mom by getting groceries or doing a load of laundry. And every day before work, he tells me, 열심히 하고, enjoy 하고, just be yourself. Words my dad longed to hear from his own father, a stern Korean man who never spoke of the emotional trauma he experienced during the Japanese occupation of Korea and the Korean War. Recently, I learned that my grandpa never said I love you to my dad. And the first time my dad said those words to him was when my grandpa was on his deathbed 13 years ago. Hearing that absolutely crushed me. Because while I struggled to understand my dad's love for me, he showed it in the ways he best could. By telling me the same story about how when I was 4, we went on a road trip together, and the entire time we held hands. Showing his affection by smacking my head or pinching my shoulders. And saying how proud he is of me to my relatives, my church members, and other people. All of these things used to annoy me so much. But that was before I understood the heart behind my dad's actions. And through all this self-reflection, my dad and I now have a really close relationship. Looking back on my 27 years of life, what I appreciate most about him is his patience with me. Because it turns out, I am exactly like him. I am his thumbprint in every sense of the word. We're both stubborn, clumsy, and goofy. We're both afraid of failure and of rejection. And we literally have the same thumbs. These toe thumbs. Yeah. So, I guess in our own way, I am daddy's girl. Appa, I love you.
All right, coming up next, we have SHAMU. Sam is a second-generation queer Korean American originally from Virginia. Sam is part of NAKASEC, which is the National Korean American Service and Education Consortium. Thank you, NAKASEC, for all your service. They fight towards social, racial, and economic justice. We've got a good group in Chicago, NAKASEC people. So their story, Sam's story, is called Grandma's Pancakes. Give it up.
One thing I learned growing up in America is that Americans love pancakes. Pancakes were always on TV. From morning to night, I'd see, come on over to IHOP. Even the actual shows would have pancakes. The Tanner family from Full House would have pancakes for breakfast. So did today's Modern Family. Pancakes, pancakes, pancakes. And despite their ubiquity, every American child's face would beam at the idea of having them for breakfast. Whenever I would go to my white friend's house, they would jump for joy when their mom told them that we were going to be having pancakes. So I gathered that pancakes were a common dish that no American took for granted. Every real American had pancakes involved in some form, from blueberry, strawberry, to the ever-decadent chocolate. I didn't care for them, though. The flavors were too sweet. I craved something savory. The fluff was too airy. I'm more of a texture kind of gal. And the golden color of theirs, it was more of a fool's gold to me. Too shady. And finally, their aroma was one note for my nose. There was no versatility. Where's the pizzazz? Koreans, though, we got pancakes down. And yeah, that's right, here, give it up for us. We got good pancakes up in here. And ever since I was a child, kimchi buchingge were my savory dream. Their spice tantalized my tongue. Their red-orange sheen excited my eyes. And don't get me started on their smell. Fermented pickled sweet goodness swirled up in red-hot chili flakes, and with one strong inhale, my fate was sealed. I would often watch my 할머니 make these for dinner. Whenever I heard that distinct crunch of the knife against these fermented cabbages, I knew kimchi buchingge was on the menu, and honey, did I get my life? In gay speak, that means excited. Seeing those red juices of spices not found in any supermarket left me gagged. That means awestruck. And the flour mixed in with the kimchi gave the concoction a sickening, no, not that sickening, I mean amazing, bright blood orange tint that warmed my heart. You see, during these cooking sessions, I could never really be of service to my 할머니. She had that skill, that all grandmas and moms seem to have, where she could cook effortlessly without measuring a goddamn single thing. Objectivity was out, and subjectivity was in. And when I was little and my Korean was at peak perfection, I would often ask my 할머니, how do you know how much kimchi to put in? How much of the kimchi juice, flour ratio, and how long do you mix it for? And with each prying question, my 할머니 would shrug and say she just knew. She wasn't going to tell me the tea. That means truth. So the kimchi pancake recipe remained her secret handshake for me to never find out. Now that's shade. As I grew older, these questions I would pose to my 할머니 became far and few. Not because my curiosity died, but because my linguistic capacity was sacrificed for the sake of assimilation. Over time, society would chop away at my authentic whole self to get to that American part that was palatable to the mainstream. Over time, my artful way of speaking became choppy, my vocab choices crunchy, like the knife against the kimchi. But this time, my Korean fluency was that fermented goodness, and my white surroundings, the knife that delivered a final blow, giving my Korean tongue a crunch that didn't tantalize me at all. But my 할머니 and I didn't need the art of conversation. We had kimchi buchingge. I didn't need complex sentences to convey that I loved watching my 할머니 cook. My eyes did the talking. I didn't need a rich vocabulary to convey how much I loved eating my 할머니's food. My mouth full of kimchi buchingge said it all. My intent focus on her cooking was my diction, my full mouth the syntax, and the presentation of my empty plate was a complex compound sentence that asked my 할머니, seconds please. My Korean tongue lost its skill, but I was very fluent in Korean body language. It's been about 4 years since my 할머니's passed away. I haven't stopped eating kimchi buchingge though. That distinct crunch still lives on, and whenever I hear that knife against the kimchi, I half expect to see my 할머니 in the kitchen. Seeing that blood orange batter brings me back to my curiosity for my 할머니's recipe. Every bite I take reminds me of my 할머니's refusal to tell me her amazing recipe, much to my dismay. And when I look down at my empty plate, I think about how much I still miss my 할머니. The kimchi buchingge will never be as good as hers, but the aftertaste reminds me so much of her that it compels me each time to ask for more until I'm 100% full on memory. I don't know if there's a heaven, but if there is, I hope my 할머니's up there making kimchi buchingge for all the white folks, because let's be real, Koreans do it better.
All right, so coming up next, we have Cassie Chee. Ooh. Cassie's a Chinese Okinawan Korean American born in Los Angeles, raised in Duwamish land, I hope I'm saying that right, also known as Seattle. Depending on who you ask, Cassie becoming a pastor, a nun, or a witch as she studies for her master's at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary. So interesting. Her story is Dear 할머니. Give it up for Cassie Chee.
My life is not just my own. I am born of a dream, 할머니, your dreams, like the ones that gave birth to today, my sister's graduation. Zoe was so excited to finally graduate and become a nurse just like you. It would have been wonderful to have you here, to pin Zoe and acknowledge the legacy of healing power from one generation to another. But we understand that you had to stay home to prepare meals for 할아버지 every day, while still rising before the sun to breathe life into us, your children and grandchildren, the embodiment of your dreams. I have to admit, part of me is relieved that you didn't come, because our lives in person don't always resemble your dreams for us as much as the pictures we paint for you over the phone do. I always have mixed feelings when I call you, because the expectations to embody your dreams as the firstborn of a firstborn of a firstborn are frankly 3 generations too high. And the reality of being mixed, Korean, Okinawan, Chinese, did not exactly set me up to meet those expectations. 할머니, what I'm trying to say is, I'm sorry that I broke your heart. My mom told me she talked with you on the phone about my hijiji tattoo. She told me that it is disturbing you, that you can't sleep because it disturbs your dreams, that you haven't even told 할아버지 yet because who knows what he will say. I don't think I'll ever completely understand why this is so upsetting to you. But when you tell me your stories, I can understand why my hijiji and what it looks like to you seem to oppose your dreams for me. When you tell me stories about fleeing from North to South Korea, across the 38th parallel, packing everything you can carry, losing family members to war, working to survive in a country where you have somehow become a foreigner, I am grateful for the efforts that you took to make us safe. When you tell me stories about immigrating to Los Angeles alone with 2 kids, at the hospital all day, caring for patients who didn't care about you, while 할아버지 went to school at night, I am grateful for the lessons I learned from your and 할아버지's work ethic that show me how to work hard today towards the fulfillment of my own dreams. When you tell me stories about the efforts that you took to get my mom to college, you and 할아버지 living your hard-earned careers when you realized you wouldn't earn enough because they would never promote Korean immigrants. Buying a villas, your liquor store in Van Nuys instead of living your dreams. Selling sandwiches, liquor, cashing checks, befriending gangs, and carrying a gun. I am grateful that you taught me we must always do everything we can for the well-being of our family. I don't think I can ever express to you how grateful I am that you gave your whole life for us. But can I be grateful if I don't meet your dreams and expectations for me? Please hear me when I say it kills me that a marking I chose to receive to honor our family breaks your heart. I honestly can't say that I regret my decision though, because I really thought this through. I chose to receive my hijiji because it is the same tattoo that my grandma's grandma on my Okinawan side embodied 200 years after Japan banned Okinawan women from the tattoo practice. My Hawaii grandma says that on the sugarcane plantations where she immigrated, she was the only one with the tattoo. Japanese folks, Filipino folks, other Okinawan folks, even our own family looked down on her and felt shame for her. But my Hawaii grandma can't seem to shake the memory that her grandmother was proud. So I understand that it is a privilege to choose to receive a marking that makes me stand out in a land that you have worked so hard so that I can fit in. I understand that you think it looks scary and that it may make me look dangerous. I understand that in your eyes, my body has become a vessel that can no longer hold your dreams. I'm sad that I'm letting you down by being proud of who I am and from whom I come from. I now see that as a multi-ethnic Asian woman, a child of many different immigrants, it is inevitable that being all of myself means embracing the complexity of honoring a multiplicity of cultures and dreams. It means holding the beauty and strength of my body, as well as the responsibility for hurting you. It means that I have to hold the seemingly contradictory consequences of being who I am. The way that I see it, choosing to receive my hijiji was not a way to prioritize one culture over another, or to choose to return to a culture that I have never known. It is how I honor you and all of the women in our family. It is to honor the ways that you worked hard, gave everything, and never complained, even when people silenced you and looked down on you. It is my embodied prayer, a prophecy to the Japanese empire in this colonial state that we have settled in that says, look, you cannot twist the beauty that you have made to feel shame. You cannot twist the strength of a woman, the firstborn of a firstborn of a firstborn of generations of women who worked hard and yet were still made to feel weak. You cannot twist the dream of a grandmother by tricking her grandchildren to believe that they will only be happy if they can uphold the status quo. Harmony, we may never see it the same, but I have always been born of your dreams.
Fierce. All right, speaking of fierce, next up is Deb Kim. Deb has been writing poetry since she was 12 years old, and her first attempts at spoken word date back to high school when she first found clips of deaf poetry jam on YouTube. So Deb is now delving into freestyle and hopes to transition her writing into music. And her story is called Letter to Confucius. Let's give it up to Deb Kim.
Dear Confucius, who the fuck are you, dude? I'm just trying to figure out how I know you, how you've been passed down generations, and you're somehow a part of this celebration of a feast called being Asian. See, I tried to Google your manifestations. You still remain kind of vague, but broken Google translates a phrase or two that say, reflect on the past, recognize the new, and know your place. Ever since I was a kid, I asked my parents where we got these rules from. Waiting for the oldest to eat first, bowing to ancestors, the strict focus on education. They told me these values are Confucian. I have questions because I've always been a curious kid, and when it comes to culture, I'm only part Korean. I got a lot of how comes and whys, like there's an emphasis on the ability to study and memorize. I'm just wondering when that converted to high rates of suicide. It's very Confucian to focus on filial piety. It trickles down every hierarchy. But what's with fobby dads and their Twinkie sons beating up younger ones and demanding things like respect me, 나는 형? Are we gonna talk about the woman's place? There's so much saving face instead of honesty. I guess if the shit stinks, we can cover it with rhinoplasty. Look, I'm not judging, but I am questioning. We call it phenomena, but I call it surviving, or a Han thing. Dear Confucius, I don't really know if you're to blame. I'm just trying to unfold the fragments of my heritage, because these snippets are what I've inherited. And just because you don't tell me stories doesn't mean I don't feel the pain of the ones before me. The secrecy, the silence, and the shame. In the name of honor and social harmony, we are taught to suppress our own inadequacies. Know your place. Respect the elderly. Obedience is key. Then I wish someone would explain to me the tragedy that was entrusting our authorities during Sewol, April 2014. Maybe my frustration is a bit misplaced. Maybe me and the rest of us 2.0s are just a little displaced. Maybe you can't spell ignore without assimilate. But when people laugh at my dad because of his accent, when I'm unresponsive in class and teacher asks, do you speak English? Instead of considering I'm shy and it's the second grade, I can't help but to relate. Dear Confucius, maybe we're distant relatives cause I feel like long lost cousins once removed from these confusions. Maybe I only see in broken pieces. But this experience is fully intact. And I'm piecing together the facts. Reflect on the past, recognize the new. I think these values are actually beautiful. I'm just wondering if we got tired of being colonized and the way to survive was to colonize our own lives. Know your place. You know, these things back at home affect me too. Even though I grew up in the States. And this is my place. Korean American, imperfect, unapologetic, learning to take up space. I am oceans of my ancestors' grief. The shoreline for my parents' sacrificed dreams. and in between. Crevice of beauty and broken. I am fragments and pieces yet complete in these hyphen moments. Dear Confucius, I'm just trying to figure out how I know you. How all these confusions have been passed down generations. And I welcome you to the celebration of a feast called being Asian.
Fierce. All right. I'm so excited next to introduce Chicago's own Steve Han. Steve, I know. He's an actor comedian in Chicago who's proudly not using his degree in biology from University of Chicago. Ooh, take that, Steve's parents. Ooh. But he has performed at venues such as Steppenwolf, Laugh Factory, and Second City, where Steve also teaches improv. I think the first Korean person to teach improv at Second City? Oh, that's right, Peter Kim. Second counts. Actually, we're Korean. No, it doesn't. Sorry. Anyway, but still, he's still doing it. So his story, let's welcome him, is called Misfits and SHAMU. Steve Kim. Steve Han.
Hi, my name is Steve Han, and I've always had a pretty hard time feeling like I fit in. For those of you who don't know me in the room, I identify as Floridian, I identify as queer, and I identify as a Korean American. I'm originally from New York, but then 9/11 happened and my mom got freaked out, so she moved us from New York to Korea and then soon after to Florida. For those of you who weren't raised in Florida, good for you. You all look very well adjusted and happy. Must be nice. I always say that Florida is like the racist off-brand version of Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, so growing up there was a treat. Growing up queer and Korean was a whole other story as well. For example, for those of you who might have seen the TV show RuPaul's Drag Race, it's a great show, yes, I highly recommend it. And you might know that in the history of the show, there have been 2 Korean drag queens, which is really awesome. And their names are Kimchi and Soju. Let that sink in. The only representation of what I can see myself on TV are named after foods that give me heartburn. If there is a queen next season named 부대찌개 or japchae or japspaghetti, I'm gonna lose it. I'm going to freak out. But being queer and being a Floridian are nothing like what it's like to grow up in this country as a Korean American. To be so visibly different really does make an impact on all of our lives. I was made fun of a lot when I moved to Florida, and I have this sneaking suspicion that it's because I had the body and face and daddy issues of the kid from Up. I think his name is Russell. But I had the personality of the bird from Up. I believe her name was Kevin. And so my mom was pretty worried because I think a large part of why I was being made fun of a lot was because I was gaining weight kind of rapidly while I was in Florida. And so my mom took me to the Korean witch doctor down the street. And Dr. Kim prescribed me with hanyak. For those of you who don't know what hanyak is, it's a Korean herbal medicine. It's brown, it's very bitter. It's made from a harabaji who climbs a mountain on a donkey, finds the 8th missing member of BTS, sacrifices him to Buddha or something, drains the blood and combines that with the shell of a turtle from a failed DreamWorks movie or something. And it's supposed to be this magical medicine that is supposed to immediately give you 쌍꺼풀 and make you grow to 180 cm. And give you 주먹 얼굴. And as you can see from my pageant 얼굴, none of those things happened to me. None of that happened to me at all. And what I was failing to tell my mom and my doctor at the time was I was gaining weight because I was pretty stressed out about where I was supposed to use the bathroom. So for those of you who have never visited a Florida public school, again, you look very happy. They don't have locks on all of the bathrooms. And they don't have locks on the bathrooms because they're worried that the student might die while they are using the bathroom. And so I was very worried and conscientious that when I was going number 2, someone would open up the bathroom door suddenly without knocking, and I would emit a large fart attack out of pure shock. And I was a pretty bright kid and I knew about science, so I had learned about gases and states of matter at this point, and I knew that gases filled up the container of the room that they're in. So I was worried that I would subject everyone to what I smelled like on the inside. And so I decided to get into this very unhealthy eating habit of only eating shinramyeon after school every day, and then getting into this unhealthy bowel movement pattern of only having these 2 p.m. ninja poops every 3 business days. And so naturally, I gained quite a bit of weight during this, so my mom decided it would be a good idea for me to sign up for swim lessons. So I go to my first swim lesson, and immediately everyone there starts calling me SHAMU. For those of you who odd, you will know that it's the orca whale from SeaWorld. And I thought they were calling me SHAMU because, like SHAMU, I was a recent Orlando transplant against my will. And I too have an irrational fear of white people watching me swim. But in reality, it was because there was such an easily definable, visible difference between all of those skinny, white, blonde kids and I. When you're in an in-group, it's so easy to look at those on the outside and immediately decide that they're not worthy. And when you're on the outside looking in, it's so easy to internalize that and feel like we're never going to belong, nor do we deserve to. It's so easy for the traits that we build, that we use to acculturate into our white American society, to be used against us. And it's so easy for people like me, and I'm sure many of you out there, to be called words like too much or weird, but those same traits on a white person being called bold or sassy or brave, and most importantly, warranted. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have a hard journey full of trials and tribulations to get to where I am now, and I'm still on it. And it's this journey that I think all of us in this room face when we're the other at some point in our lives, to find self-love and compassion for yourself. I don't think I've still found it, but it has been easier because I've surrounded myself with people who don't make fun of me and highlight our differences, but rather embrace me and love me for the things that make us the same. And I think I can say for the first time in a while that I'm pretty happy with where I am. Thank you. Thank you, I've been Steve Han.
Self-love, that's a great message, Steve. Thank you. Steve Han. All right, now let's give it up. Our final performer is Kris Kim. Kris is a poet and an urban dancer who says she dyes her hair pink every couple of months. She's a Brooklyn girl at heart, but is excited to learn and grow about the Chicago community, and her story is called That Place of Glad Voices. All right, Kris Kim, give it up.
So one night, I came across this documentary on YouTube called Koryo Saram, The Unreliable People. And in it, a woman who could be my grandmother sings of dreaming up this hometown where she's greeted for her return. But as she reaches for the people clasping hands in welcome, she wakes and cries, for that place of glad voices is nowhere to be found. Koryo Saram, for Korean person, or Soviet person of Korean descent, or Korean person living in East Russia displaced to Central Asia because they were thought to be helping the Japanese, or 1937, The year of Joseph Stalin's policy of systemic population transfers, the first forced movement of an entire population in the USSR. The year 40,000 Koreans died in deportation, bodies slipping into dusty ghost trails as the trains continued west. The year Uzbekistan became a dumping ground for weeping people who were told to cultivate a barren land and banned from speaking in their native tongue so soon, forgot it altogether. Here's a not so common history that I only learned a few years back. Here's history of how they turned my people into propaganda posters praising their obedience as if we had a choice. No, we saw the dead once thrown out of train cars, didn't see the point of fighting back when here, at least we had the hands to bury those who died and save them from becoming restless spirits locked out of the afterlife. Here's a history of my family who survived and to this day are still alive. Here's a history I can't yet fathom because I love buying pirashki on the streets of Brighton Beach and listening to Mr. Credo's medyak in the car with my dad, and I love waking up on Sunday mornings to the smell of my grandma's fresh batch of blinchiki. See, growing up in southern Brooklyn, Russian culture was all around, and I didn't feel that different. I ate and spoke like those around me. But sometimes I'd pass a mirror or catch a close glimpse of my best friend's eyes, and my slant eyes staring into pools of green and blue eyelash double lids, it was easier to say I was Korean. It's funny, the summer that I learned to say 사랑해요 and 감사합니다, I was studying for the SAT. I was sitting in an air-conditioning tutoring center, hearing the words come out of my white friend who was going through a K-drama phase. What else could I do but feel thankful that I was one step closer to learning a language I was already supposed to know, as horribly pronounced as you just heard, and pathetic as it was. I swear I was thankful. It's just that summer, gratitude looked a lot more like shame. Shame of bearing the most Korean last name you can possibly get. Shame as I recall the days of being called a fake Korean and standing out from all my Russian friends. Days of homemade pigodya, kuksi, and markovcha, Russianized Korean food that my Asian peers knew nothing of. Days of fierce frustration, and days that turned themselves to years. Today, it's left me in Chicago, with parts of me still left back in New York, and parts back in Uzbekistan, the place I thought was home, but I know that history never just starts from when you were born, so there must be some part of me that's still lingering in a place where my Korean-speaking relatives once sat and chatted over tea, and another part that danced amongst the dusty ghost trails by the same relatives who were transferred to another land, sitting cramped, one body on another, only hunger, thirst, and silence to be shared. Yes, them too, whose names I do not know, but whose pain I want to understand, whose love I always feel. As they watch me from their undug graves, they know I have but pieces of a puzzle that will never be complete. Those times I try and reach for one country and always feel like I'm losing of all the rest. But I'm learning from my sadness and my anger as they teach me to not keep them bottled in my two small, desperate fists, two fists that symbolize how all these identities inside me come to fit, one of Korean blood and Russian tongue, the fist that holds the past before me but has shaped every moment since, and the other that holds America, my life here in the States, as I struggle to figure out where and who I am. But these fists don't mean I'll ever be just 50-50, half of this and half of that, because these fists are also home to fingers, knuckles, bitten nails, and wide-stretched palms. And I try to remember that open hands don't mean that I'll lose everything I have. I don't need to cling to all these pieces because they'll always be inside of me. But open hands do mean I can catch the wonders of this beautiful life. And like the singing woman dreaming, open hands mean I can reach for people. This time, I know that they'll reach back because this is no dream. I hear their voices with the song of spirits singing right beside me. Because the love of those I've known and know and those I've yet to meet is my definition of a home. For that place of glad voices is everywhere I am. Thank you.
All right, Kris Kim. We're gonna call up all the spokespeople here today. So, okay, first of all, judges are gonna go deliberate. We're running a little bit late, but 시간이 we have time. So, okay, the judges are gonna go deliberate. Do, 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 do. Let's get all the storytellers up here. Give them up. Come on, give them a round of applause. Call them all back up here. We have Kris Kim, Steve Han, Deb Kim, Cassie Chee, SHAMU, and we have, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, forgive me. Come on up. And of course we have Stephanie Kim. Come on up. So, while the judges are deliberating, we're gonna do a little interview, so hold on. 이야기 합시다, 이야기. We're gonna talk, we're gonna do this, let's do this talk show style. So, here we go. All right. Actually, I have these random questions, and I believe that you have each been, it's a little bit prepped, so you guys know what we're, right? You got the questions that we're all talking about? Wait, look, okay. Photo op. Will you guys look forward? Go ahead, take your pictures. Look at these people. Look at them. Oh my God, take their pictures. I know that I saw on social media, some of you are tagging already, and I forgot too. It's Roar CHI19. Seriously, take these pictures. Look at these amazing human beings. Vibrant, I mean, to me, vibrant, young storytellers. Thank you all for your bravery. Very interesting and different stories. So we're going to start with Stephanie over there. How are we going to do this? We're all sitting, so I'm just going to come over here and ask you. So your story about your father. Okay, so we were wondering about if you can look back and talk about the pinpoint, like the turning point. You mentioned it a little bit. Can you elaborate? And we're supposed to be quick, you know.
I'll keep it quick. Actually, yeah, the turning point for me was when, so I grew up in a Christian family, and I didn't really come to faith until college, and I struggled to understand who God was in a fatherly sense. Like, I understood you have to, obey and respect, but the fatherly love is what I really struggled with, and I realized it's because I didn't view my dad in that way. I didn't love him in that fatherly love, and so once that realization hit me in college, kind of made it obvious to me that there's a lot I need to reconcile. But actually, yeah, that story was part of it though, because I seriously thought he was gonna like laugh and be so excited for me, but as I shared, he was pretty hurt by it. So yeah.
Thank you. Stephanie. Okay, Sam. So we're wondering about the connection between your relationship with your 할머니. Told a nice, like, people do love pancakes, but pajan's like the best, right? It is the best. Oh my gosh. So we're wondering what the connection between the relationship with your grandmother, your 할머니, and the work you're doing now as an advocate for social justice.
Yeah, so Nakasek, as our mission, we organize Korean and Asian Americans towards social, racial, and economic justice. And as a part of that, we like to center the most vulnerable who are in our community, so low-income people, limited English proficiency, recent immigrants, the undocumented, and parts of those identities were people like my 할머니. She was a recent immigrant. She didn't know English, and so that's something where I feel like even though my 할머니 has passed away, that doesn't mean I don't have a 할머니, because there is that idea of 청 in Korean culture, that kind of familial aspect of like how everyone's an imo, everyone's a nuna, everyone's a hyung, oppa, etc. And so I feel that's still a level of 청 I still keep with me in the work that we do. In advocating for social justice, and that your 할머니 is my 할머니, and we all have a puchinge story, and we all have these kinds of feelings of affection and community that we use to wield to do something greater. So yeah, does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Sam. That's a very microcosm, macrocosm. And my harmony is your harmony, it says harmony. We love our harmonies, right? Okay, Cassie, so you talked about your tattoo. And am I pronouncing it right? Is it Ji-Yeon? Ji-Yeon? Can you tell us a little bit more about it? It says here I'm supposed to ask you about it, but I'm sorry, you don't have to show us your tattoo if you don't want to show us your tattoo. But if you want to, there it is. Can you tell us more about it?
So this is my Ji-Yeon tattoo, and in Okinawa, traditionally, women would get them on both hands. And it's actually pretty sad because there's not a lot of information available because of so much like cultural suppression. So most of what I learned is just through like talking story at my grandma's house in Hawaii, and yeah, I think I got it more than like the original meaning, like what tattoos signify now are different, obviously. And I think I got it to kind of embody the resistance that my great-great-grandmother had, and to like not let that die in silence, and just to remember like who I come from and who that puts me in solidarity with today. Yeah.
Can you give us a solid one of these? Beautiful, I know, it's so good. Wait, can I do like, not to predict social media prompt, but maybe you could do with your badass Ji-Yeon tattoo, like, you know, the little Korean heart? No, just saying. Omo. Just saying. Okay, so Deb said, let's see, we talked about your spoken word performance, captured some of the cultural tensions you see and feel about being Asian. So is there a specific moment when you felt this kind of like resentment about Confucianism? Like a specific moment?
I feel like the whole poem is me not really feeling sure about how I feel about Confucianism, but I can recall like 2 times. One is like I started going to a Korean church in high school, and I would like really see like the oppas, like the guys like beating up the younger kids, and then being like, oh, I'm your hyung, so I can do this. That like didn't make sense to me. And a couple days ago, so the New Yorker released like a new documentary a couple months ago about Sewol, and I watched it right before I flew here. And just seeing the footage, it was all like footage from the ship, and like students saying things like, isn't this one of those things where we're supposed to listen to them, but if we don't listen, we'll be saved or we'll survive? And just like actually hearing them say that before they passed and they didn't make it, I think that definitely like made me mad. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, the stakes are pretty high in that one. It's like life or death. That was the limit of that. So thanks. Yeah. I didn't know about that documentary, so I want to watch it. Steve Hahn. So you were pre-med at University of Chicago. Oh my gosh. And then now you're doing comedy. So was there a moment when you were like, I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm actually very funny? Like, what was that moment for you? Not that doctors can't be funny, but you know, Korean.
Yeah, I mean, like Ken Jeong is always my mom's like, 근데 켄은, Dr. Ken은 MD 받았고 코미디 했잖아, you know? My mom has this little YouTube clip saved of him like stopping a stand-up show to save someone in the audience, and she always sends it. I'm like, not me. I can never. I don't know. I mean, I was a pretty traditional, like Korean kid girl. I was like a super nerd. I went to math camp for 7 years. Yeah, I mean, I was like a huge loser, and I, like, went to the University of Chicago and was told like when you go like do math competitions and you're told like this is your narrative that you have to follow. Like I was like, yeah, pre-med makes sense for me, even though I have like no passion in helping people is not the right word. I have no passion in medicine. Let's say that. I have no passion in medicine, and so I did. But my first week of college, I saw my first sketch show at U Chicago by like the oldest collegiate improv group, and I was like, oh, I want to try that, and I auditioned for the improv teams there, and they all rejected me, no callback, and I was like, okay, this is like God saying, don't do this. Who am I to like question God? So I was like, I'm not gonna try comedy. But then I tried stand up for this like male beauty pageant that I was asked to compete in. And I bombed. I did really, really badly, but I liked that feeling of failure, knowing that I could punch it up and like fix it in front of a different audience too. So that's kind of when I started to pursue a little bit more seriously towards like the last year of college. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. I love that it's like through different failures that you succeed, right? Okay, so Kris, so interesting about Uzbekistan. So I really didn't know a lot about the ethnically Korean population in Uzbekistan. So you are all of a sudden the ambassador for all ethnically Korean people in the entire country right here. But do you know if there's a population of, like a large population in America or Chicago? Is there a community here?
Well, I just moved to Chicago in the fall, so I do have a family friend here who lives near the airport. We're really close, and she's also Koryo Saram. In New York, there's even a newly opened cafe that's all like Russian Korean food, which is very unique, and there's not that many like them out there. But like once in a while, I will meet someone who's very similar to my background, and before it didn't, click. I was like, oh, that's cool. But now I feel like I get it more. Yeah.
That's so interesting. That kind of reminds me of, I feel like, especially now in Korea, like, what does a Korean face look like? Do you feel like, I'm in the generation where, like, if you know someone who somehow is like not related to you or not at the same church, it's kind of like, oh, but you kind of know each other. And then sometimes it got to be like, are you Korean? You have to be Korean. Do you look Korean? What does Korean look like? But so it's so nice to hear all these stories and like, this is what Korean looks like, right? Like, this is what Korean looks like. So you can be Korean from Uzbekistan and still look like the rest of us. So judges, please come on up.
So we have 3 honorable mentions, and we are going to talk about them in alphabetical order by first name. So I will speak about Kris, who spoke about her particular experience as Koryo Saram, Uzbekistan, Russian, Korean. It is such an unusual history, and yet the notes that it had, the emotional resonance it had, was so familiar, and it was such a joy to hear that story. Thank you.
And I have the pleasure of speaking to Sam's piece. Sam, you were clearly one of the crowd's favorites, and I think all of us who grew up eating our grandmother's cooking really not only felt the heart in your story, but my mouth was watering as you were talking about it. I could feel the crunching of the kimchi and the colors, and your piece was so vivid and so lyrical. We really enjoyed it, and you have so much talent, so thank you for sharing your story with us.
I get to speak about Stephanie Kim. Stephanie, I think it's really easy, especially in this day and age, to come up here and act really tough. And we do that toughness because we're covering how scared we are. You did something that is so difficult. You stood in stillness. And I was so drawn in by that when you were telling your story, you didn't need to put that tough exterior on, that I was so drawn in to just your relationship with your father. I kept on thinking of my own father, which I think that's what magic is when you tell a story.
So I would like to award 3rd place to Deb. Deb Kim, your letter to Confucius was inspiring. It was beautiful. It was bold. It was beautifully told. I was engaged from beginning to end. And most importantly, you found a lovely way to interpret all this rage and frustration and turn it into something absolutely beautiful and poetic. And for that, I congratulate you. Thank you.
Okay. I get the honor of announcing who came in 2nd place. In 2nd place, I truly enjoyed your story. So I want everyone to please give a big hand to Steve. Steve, there's no doubt that you're a very funny guy, and I think everyone in the audience, when you told the SHAMU story, both kind of had their own SHAMU story and wish they could have been there to help you in that moment. Like, we all felt that, and we all never want that to happen to anyone else. And it's the message of your story, we really liked, this idea of coming from a place where you didn't know where you could fit in, and being at a place now where you can say truly and honestly that you are happy with who you are and where you are. And I think that's a story that I hope we're all able to tell one day, so thank you very much. So I also will get to announce who's in first place. I'm sure you've already figured it out, so please, a big hand for Cassie. Cassie, I truly enjoyed your story, and framing it as a letter, I think, spoke in a way that I feel as though we've all either had that moment in our lives or want to have that moment. And it's, for me, what I took away from it, it was this idea of that I want you to understand me and who I am and what it means to be me, because I think as Asian Americans, we struggle with identity enough with ourselves and with the world around us. And then on top of that, the generational gap and beyond that. And it's an additional fight that I know I've never been able to fully explain to anyone who doesn't have that same experience. And so for you to be able to tell that story in such an impassioned way, I think certainly gives me courage. And so I genuinely thank you for that. So congratulations.
Thank you, judges. Congratulations, 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 congratulations. Give it up for our storytellers. Come on, y'all. Come on, stand up. Give it up, give it up. Look at these brave, brave, brave people. Thank you so much. Woo! Baksu, baksu, baksu. And thank you all. Give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you, HJ. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, everyone, for Korean American Story. Thank you, judges. All right, this is a celebration. The party's not over, though. Stay if there's any food left. Probably not, because, Korean. If there's any food left, you're welcome. Stay and have some drinks. Judges, people, we're going to stick around and have a couple, picture. And then I think we're all good. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. See you next year.